Dallas-Fort Worth folks are obviously familiar with your work with Raid of Rainbow Lounge. When did you first hear about this story, though? How did you find out about this story? Because I'd never heard of the Upstairs Lounge, about the fire, about any of this.
Right. Neither had I. I thought I knew my gay history. And one of my associate producers, who eventually became an associate producer, had seen Raid of the Rainbow Lounge and had seen what we had been able to accomplish with that film, that it wasn't just a film at film festivals, but we were able to use it to help educate and enlighten people. And he approached me about this story. He said, "Have you ever heard about the Upstairs Lounge fire?" And I'm like, "What?" And this was probably late 2012 or 2013. Okay. And he told me about the fire and the devastation, and I just felt like this story needs to be told because it's an important part not only of LGBT history but of American history as well.
Yeah.
Still the deadliest fire in New Orleans history.
Yeah.
And so it is a part of our collective history that just has been hidden for too long.
So how did you start finding those people and contacting them? What was the process of setting up the interviews? How long did it take to actually start beginning?
It took a while. The process from beginning to end, it was about 2.5 years. The way I go about telling my stories is I start from the ground level. I don't depend upon any other research, secondary research. I start with the police reports and work up, because I don't want to perpetuate any mistruths or folklore, because there's some folklore out there about this event, but I think that happens with any major event. But I definitely wanted to tell this story. I needed to be responsible for everything that I said, so I want to make sure I did my research. So it was about finding these people, and that took time. It's easier with Facebook and social networking now and the internet, but it was about building relationships. I would find them, introduce myself to them, tell them about my past work, send letters of recommendation, and just get to know them and build relationships. It wasn't about, once I found a survivor or a family member who lost a close member of their family in the fire, it wasn't, "Hi, my name's L Camina, I want to interview you for this film." It was, I want you to get to know me, understand that I'm not looking to exploit the event. I'm looking to tell the story with respect and dignity and give them the honor that they did not get back in 1973. So when we finally sat down to talk for the interview, it was an honest conversation. We knew each other, and they were more relaxed to talk openly and honestly about it, and I think that comes through in the film.
Did you obviously you expect some type of emotion when you finally do sit down with them, but I was blown away with just how emotional I got watching it. How hard was it for you at the time of the interview?
Personally, yeah. it was hard to conduct these interviews and remain stoic, if you will. Our first interview was with the Reverend Elder Troy Perry, the founder of the Metropolitan Community Church. That one would last about 4 hours, and he just got incredibly emotional. And his stories, as you'll see in the movie, or you've seen in the movie, just are devastating. You see the hurt in his eyes, and you hear it in his voice. And I think everyone had a lump in their throat when they left that interview. It was incredibly emotional.
What team do you use? Because I know you've got your DP Nick, but you also got folks in Dallas that help as well. Tell us a bit about your team.
Sure. I'd like surrounding myself with really talented people to help me with this, because it's still a very low budget film and tight schedule. So we got some people here in Dallas, because there is a survivor of the Upstairs Lounge fire that lives in Dallas. So we had a team here, and then I had a core team that traveled with me to LA and to New Orleans and in between. They all have extensive portfolios themselves, so it was great to have people that knew what they were doing, and I could just depend upon them and feel comfortable with that.
When did Christopher Rice come on board and making that choice, picking someone whose family legacy has the connection to the city?
Yes.
Was that always in mind, or was it just a fluke meeting of people.
I was very excited when Christopher Rice got on board to be the narrator. He did get on board towards the end. I always had in mind that I wanted somebody that had a connection to New Orleans, that was passionate about New Orleans, and it just came to me. I'm like, he'd be the perfect person to tell the story, because you can feed somebody lines, a script, but you can't infuse passion in it. And he loves the city, he loves the history of the city, and he's devoted to preserving the history of the city, and he had never heard of this story. So it was of particular interest to him. I approached him and he said, yes, I'm on board. So we went out to LA and recorded the narration, and it was great.
Looking at some of the footage, the photos, the Reverend speaking, how much footage did you have to look through? What was the process of finding all that?
Man, the research for the photos, for the archival footage, that probably had to have been the most difficult process of this, because not only is the story over 40 years old, but you have other factors. You have Hurricane Katrina, which destroyed a lot of archival footage, archival records in New Orleans. You had the AIDS crisis, so personal photographs and mementos, anything, were thrown out. If they survived the fire, they may not have survived the AIDS crisis. So that stuff and the AIDS-related fears, those things were thrown out. So it was a treasure hunt. I knew archives existed, but where? So it was just a constant search. I went to New Orleans, the different libraries in New Orleans, searching hours upon hours through just records and newspaper clippings and file folders, and it was tedious, but it was also exciting, because when you stumble across something that nobody else has found before. We found photographs that hadn't been seen. We found evidence, the swatch of the wallpaper, and that's not something that has been presented in any version of the story that's been told to date. So it was very. It took a long time. That's what took the lion's share, the 2.5 years, is just the research. Because to me, to get the full impact of the story, the audience needs to see it and experience it, be taken back in time and have that context. And you can be told about the fire. You can be told that it was, the flames were 10 feet high. You can say that the flames were swirling. And that's good, but when you see it, it brings it to an entire new level, and you get it. And when I found that footage, which hadn't been seen, the news footage, which hadn't been seen in over 40 plus years, that was a really good day for me, because it was able to put people in the moment, and they were able to get context.
I'm curious, I don't want you to reveal who you find that is the closest connection to being the arsonist, but when you find that information and you're piling through the police records, but there isn't a trial, there isn't a case per se,
right?
It must be difficult. You are unearthing that history, and yet you can't use that to put someone in blame for this. And I know the Reverend says it best, we would forgive that person, but it must be heartbreaking to go through this and realize there wasn't someone 40 years ago doing this. They gave up on this case or didn't take it serious. That's part of the film, I think, the heart of it at least.
Yeah, there were several investigations. Some people feel like there could have been more attention given to the investigation had it happened in a straight establishment, had it happened to wealthy people. There had been more of a stronger investigation, more of an emphasis on finding the culprit, and that didn't happen. So that level of closure never is going to exist for people who were touched by the fire. And without giving the reveal, I think that people have come to terms with what happened, and if the person who the primary suspect did actually indeed start the fire, I think most people have found forgiveness.
I was really moved by when you started telling about the church's reactions, the different reactions, and the struggle to find the place to have a memorial. Can you talk specifically about the Methodist Church stepping up and about being able to tell that side of the story? Because I think that's one of the more amazing parts of it. When everyone was saying no, and some people were going to extreme measures, calling people aliens, that blew me away.
Yeah.
And yet these people open their doors and they open their hearts to the survivors.
Right. Well, St. George's Episcopal Church with Reverend Bill Richardson and St. Mark's Methodist Church, I mean, those are, I think, some of the true heroes in this story. In a time where religion turned their backs towards the LGBT community, these two churches opened their doors for memorial services. St. George's first, a smaller service, but Reverend Richardson got in trouble for hosting that. But then St. Mark's Methodist Church opened up their doors for the official memorial and packed the church. I mean, filled the balcony. And I think that those were the true heroes, because it wasn't about whether these people were gay. And that's another point. Not everybody who was in the bar was gay. Not everybody who died in the fire was gay. And yet these churches were denying funerals and memorials based solely upon the location where these people perished. Nothing else. And so these two churches stepped forward and gave people hope. Because as Reverend Bishop says, Reverend Breton says in the film, the time of death, you look to the church for some level of comfort. And many churches weren't there for them. So St. George's Episcopal Church and St. Mark's Methodist Church and the Metropolitan Community Church, Troy Perry and his entourage were really there to help give, I think, spiritual guidance and hope to the families, to the friends of victims, and so I think that's an incredibly important part of the story.
You know, being able to show this at Austin Film Festival, I know that's nice for you personally, but also the timing of it. It is going to happen Halloween weekend, just going into that. That's significant, obviously, to the film as well.
How so?
In that, you know, it happened later in the year, and I just think it fits in nicely that it's, I don't know, there's something to it being.
Well, it happened on what is now considered Gay Pride weekend.
Yes.
So it happened on the last Sunday in June in New Orleans. Gay Pride, this was 1973. Gay Pride hadn't quite made it down to the South yet. Stonewall was in 1969. So I don't really think that there was any correlation. It's just a very eerie coincidence that it happened on, Gay Pride Day. But October is Gay History Month, and it also happens to be Fire Prevention Month. So we're on November 1st, so we're right on the edge of that. But there is some symmetry to it all, because this is a significant part of gay history, and obviously fire prevention.
What's it like being able to showcase it at Austin Film Festival, though, for you?
I'm excited to screen at the Austin Film Festival. It's our Texas premiere, and it has sentimental value to me. When I decided to make the leap and go into filmmaking full time, the Austin Film Festival was the first film festival I attended. It was like 2006 or 2007. I went to the conference, the panel discussions, the round tables. I threw myself into it, the films, and it was so invigorating and so exciting to be surrounded by peers and just networking and absorbing all this incredible information. And I said to myself, I want to screen here one day. And here we are, and it is fantastic to see that journey happen from that one day and one conference to actually being able to accomplish that. So it's a personal thrill for me.
Looking at have the survivors been able to see the final film, or what have their reactions been to what you've been able to showcase?
Well, we premiered the film on the 42nd anniversary of the fire in New Orleans, and many of the survivors attended the screening. Family members of victims flew in from across the country to attend the screening. Witnesses, first responders. We had an audience full of people who this is their story. That was very nerve-wracking to me, because I took the story very seriously and wanted to approach it with honor and dignity. And they had told me that it was, of course, difficult to watch, I mean, obviously, but they found it very cathartic. Regina Adams, who's in the film, when I interviewed her, she was the last person to agree to be a part of this film, and I think she plays her story is such a powerful story, and I was very glad that she agreed to be a part of this. But the story haunts her, and she said after our interview, she said, "It's going to take me, a few days to get over our conversation, that recovery time. 40 plus years later, it's still very difficult for her to talk about the fire." After the interview, she said, "You just send me a DVD when it's all said and done." I'm like, well, okay. I have to respect that, but she didn't want to relive the movie. She came to the screening, and she wanted to be there. And I happened to be in the lobby at the moment that she came in, and there was a reunion between her and several of the other survivors and just some of her core group of people that used to hang out at the upstairs lounge. And they had the screen. They hadn't seen each other since before the fire. And I felt very honored that I could facilitate this reunion. And after seeing the movie, they felt it was cathartic in the fact that over 40 some odd years, they feel like they're the only ones feeling this pain and this loneliness. But by watching the movie, they realize they are not alone, and that there are others that have gone through the same recovery process, and so it was healing for them, and I really hope it was. And now that they have reconnected, they have an ability to chat with each other, and never again will all these people touched by the fire be in the same room.
I was amazed at the subtlety and the choices in music, and I really obviously appreciated the end song that happens at the very end that's called Upstairs Lounge. Can you talk about that element and picking the right, because you don't want it to make it seem at all sappy. It never came across as overpowering. It fit in perfectly. How did you decide the choices and that final song? Can you talk a bit about that?
I really appreciate that. I scored that myself.
Wow. Okay.
So my personal style is I like to have an underscore throughout the entire film to help drive it along, drive the story along. But I didn't want it to be distracting. I wanted to complement whatever the subjects we're talking about. So it didn't happen overnight, but I wanted this kind of foreboding sense at times and a melancholy feel at times, without again being over the top or too on the nose.
Yeah.
So it was trial and error, but I was very proud of the music and the way it complements the story. So I really appreciate you saying that. The final song, the closing song, it was written and sung by an artist out of DC. Her name is Rachel Panay, and she contributed music to my last film. And we screened my last film, Raid of the Rainbow Lounge, at the Library of Congress last year, and she attended the screening, and we had lunch afterwards, and she asked me, what are you working on? And I told her. She was completely touched by the story. She goes, I have to write a song about this. And just a few weeks later, she sent me a demo track, and I was just blown away, because you could tell it came from a real place of as an ally, as a human being. Her lyrics just spoke to the overall impact of the event, and so I said, okay, this is fantastic. We've got our closing song, our credit song.
You bring up that you're able to show at the Library of Congress. You got to meet the president, yes. President Obama. I know that I don't want to push to say, will this film get that same type of treatment, but if this film is able to get that type of wonderful screening ability, what would that mean to the survivors and also to the community as a whole, that this story finally get showcased the way it should have 40 years ago?
Wow. Yeah, I literally just got chills down my arm. I think it would mean the world to the people whose lives were touched by this, because they were ignored for so long and disregarded. The story was disregarded, and many times they were treated as if they didn't matter. And for 40 plus years later to get that kind of recognition and exposure, I think would really mean a lot to them. Gosh, that's something I'm going to have to ask them, but I think that they would feel that I know that they feel, and the family members feel, that the victims are getting the honor and the respect that they didn't get before. And many have come up to me and said, I think our loved one would be very proud. And that, to me, that's what it's all about. I mean, I enjoy screening at the film festivals, but it's about telling the story and telling the story right, not exploiting it, but having that balance between the facts but the humanity. And when the family members or the survivors come up and say thank you, that made it all worth it.
So I know people are going to be moved when they see this. I was really moved. Can you tell us where we can find more information about you as a filmmaker, but also where people can find out more information about the film?
Sure thing. We have a website, UPSTAIRSINFERNO.com. On the website you can find out history about the fire. You can see our different trailers. You'll see photos from the production of it, sort of meet the people behind the film. So that's UPSTAIRSINFERNO.com. We also have a Facebook page, Upstairs Inferno, the documentary. Twitter, Upstairs Inferno. So any of those are great places to learn more about the film. And on UpstairsInferno.com, there's a place to sign up for the newsletter. You get updates on when they'll be screening across the country, when it'll become available on DVD or VOD, or maybe, hopefully, possibly, theatrical somewhere.
Very nice. Well, Robert, thank you for the time, and I can't wait to see people's reaction to this wonderful documentary.
Well, I'm very excited. I'm very excited for this to be our Texas premiere, so thank you so much for your time.